The mansion was no longer the same. The halls that once echoed with silence now carried softer sounds. There was the sound of Lily's footsteps running down the stairs, the sound of her laughter when Claire teased her gently, and the sound of voices sharing meals together. The staff felt the change as well. They spoke quietly about how the house had grown warmer, as if life had returned after a long winter. Ethan watched the change with his own eyes. He had once believed his daughter would never smile again, yet here she was, chasing butterflies in the garden with her hair flying in the wind. He often stood at a distance, his heart heavy with gratitude, and something deeper he was afraid to name. Each time he looked at Claire, he saw not only the maid who had healed his child, but the woman who had touched his own heart in ways he could not deny. One evening, Ethan invited Claire to sit with him on the veranda. The sky was painted with shades of orange as the sun sank behind the hills. Lily was asleep inside after a long day of play. For a while they sat in silence, watching the sky. Finally, Ethan spoke. He thanked Claire for all she had done. His words were simple, but his voice carried weight. He told her that she had not only saved his daughter, but had also given him hope again. Claire listened with quiet eyes. She said she had done nothing extraordinary. She only gave Lily what she needed most, which was love and patience. She admitted that caring for Lily had also healed her own heart. She had come into the mansion with her own wounds, but Lily had filled a space in her soul she thought would remain empty forever. Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her, and felt something stir inside him. For years he had locked away his feelings, convinced that love had no place in his life anymore. But now he could see clearly. He could see that love had found its way back into the mansion, carried on the gentle strength of the woman before him. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between the three of them grew stronger. Lily no longer hid her drawings. She showed them proudly to Claire and even to her father. One afternoon, she gave Ethan a picture she had drawn of the three of them standing together in the garden. Ethan held the picture in his hands, and his voice broke when he told her it was beautiful. Lily smiled brightly and hugged him, something she had not done in years. The walls of grief that had trapped them were gone now. Their place was a new beginning, one built on trust and love. The mansion no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a home. The staff noticed it every day, smiling as they worked. The cook baked more, the gardener planted new flowers, and the air in the house was filled with a sense of life. One night as Ethan tucked Lily into bed, she whispered that she was happy. He kissed her forehead and told her he was happy too. When he left the room, he found Claire waiting in the hall. He looked at her for a long moment, then simply said thank you again, but this time his eyes said more than his words ever could. Claire understood, and she smiled. The story of a mansion once filled with silence had turned into a story of love reborn. The child who could not be reached had finally opened her heart, and the father who thought he had lost everything found more than he ever imagined. Claire had done the impossible, and together they were no longer broken pieces. They were a family. Claire stepped out of the car with a small bag in her hand. She was not dressed like the maids who came before her. She wore a plain blouse and a simple skirt, but there was a calmness about her that was different. Her eyes carried warmth, but also strength, as if she had walked through storms and learned how to keep standing. She looked at the tall mansion without fear, even though others had spoken of it as a place where no maid could last. The housekeeper met her at the door. She spoke quickly, warning her about Lily and her moods. She explained how the child shouted and threw things. Claire listened in silence, nodding, but her face did not change. She had worked in many homes before. She had cared for children who were angry, children who were quiet, and children who carried grief. She knew that behind every harsh word was a wound that had not healed. When Claire entered the mansion, she noticed how beautiful it was, yet how empty it felt. The walls were bright, but the air was heavy. The sound of footsteps echoed too loudly, like no one had laughed inside for years. She followed the housekeeper up the stairs to the child's room. The door was half open, and Lily was sitting on the floor, her small hands holding a doll with tangled hair. The housekeeper whispered to Claire that Lily did not like strangers. She then stepped back, unwilling to go in. Claire walked in slowly, careful not to make the child feel trapped. Lily did not look up. She pulled the doll's dress and muttered something under her breath. Claire knelt down, keeping some space between them. "Your doll looks very loved," Claire said softly. Lily's blue eyes flicked up for a moment, sharp and guarded. No maid had spoken to her like that before. Most gave orders, telling her to clean up her toys or to sit straight. Claire had not ordered her. She had noticed something small and spoken kindly. Lily did not answer, but she did not turn away either. Ethan watched from the doorway. He had come to see the new maid fail. He expected Lily to shout and demand that she leave. His hand tightened on the frame of the door, waiting for the storm, but it did not come. Lily only held her doll tighter and stared at Claire with suspicion. Claire stayed quiet. She did not rush to fill the silence. After a long pause, she sat on the floor too, crossing her legs. She did not push the child for words. She simply stayed, showing with her presence that she would not run away. After a while, Lily stood up and went to her bed. She lay down without speaking, turning her back to the maid. Shh. Claire picked up a small book that had fallen near the pillow. It was filled with sketches made by a child's hand. There were drawings of a woman with long hair drawn again and again in different ways. Claire looked at the pictures, then placed the book gently back where it belonged. She did not say a word about it. She only smoothed the pillow and pulled the blanket over Lily's shoulder. The little girl closed her eyes, pretending not to care. But her small fingers held the edge of the blanket with a grip that showed she had noticed. Ethan's eyes softened as he watched. Something in his chest stirred, but he forced it down. He told himself it was only the first day, and the maid would leave soon like the others. Yet a part of him wondered if this one was different. He left the doorway in silence, while upstairs Claire sat quietly by the bed, patient as the night grew darker. The next morning the sun shone through the tall windows of the mansion. Claire woke early and moved quietly around the kitchen. She prepared a simple breakfast, cutting fruit into small pieces and arranging them neatly on a plate. She asked the cook to make pancakes, but requested that they be smaller, shaped in circles that might look inviting to a child. She carried the tray upstairs with steady hands. Lily was sitting by the window when Claire entered her room. The girl was holding the same doll and staring outside at the gardens. Claire placed the tray on the small table near the bed and spoke in a calm voice. She said the pancakes were made just for Lily. The child turned her head slowly, her eyes narrowing. She did not speak, but she walked over and sat down, testing the maid with her silence. Claire did not push her. She poured a glass of milk and placed it beside the plate. Lily picked up a piece of fruit and ate it without a word. It was not much, but for Claire it was a small step. She smiled softly and then left the child to finish on her own. Later that day, Claire explored the mansion. She looked at the long hallways, the heavy curtains, and the grand staircase. It was a beautiful house, but she felt the emptiness in every room. She found a corner in the library where dust had gathered on books no one touched. She ran her hand across the shelves and thought about how lonely the house felt, as if it had been waiting for warmth for too long. Ethan returned home in the afternoon. He saw Claire walking with Lily in the garden. The girl was holding her doll in one hand, but she was not pulling away from the maid. She allowed Claire to walk beside her, and that alone was unusual. Most maids never got her to leave the room. Ethan stood at a distance, surprised. He did not step closer, worried that his presence would break the moment. As they walked, Claire spoke about the flowers. She told Lily their names and how they grew in the sun. Lily glanced at her but did not reply. Still, she listened. Her small fingers touched the petals as if she wanted to understand. When evening came, Lily was back in her room. Claire noticed the sketchbook again on the table. She waited until Lily was drawing before she spoke. She asked softly if the woman in the drawings was someone special. Lily froze for a moment, then shook her head quickly. Claire did not question her further. Instead, she said the drawings were very good and that she had talent. The compliment caught Lily off guard. No one had ever spoken about her drawings before. She looked at Claire with confusion, as if she did not know whether to believe her. Then she lowered her eyes and kept drawing, but her cheeks turned slightly red. That night, Ethan passed by the room and heard a sound he had not heard in years. It was not laughter, but it was close. It was the soft hum of Claire's voice as she told Lily a short story while she prepared her for bed. Lily did not protest. She allowed Claire to sit near her, and though she kept quiet, she did not push her away. Ethan leaned against the wall outside, closing his eyes for a moment. He wanted to believe, but he was afraid to hope. He had seen too many maids come and go, yet this time felt different. He could not explain why, but something in the air had changed. Inside the room, Claire whispered goodnight and turned off the lamp. Lily's small hand clutched the corner of her blanket. For the first time in a long while, she fell asleep with a little peace in her heart. The days slowly turned into weeks. Claire stayed in the mansion, moving with quiet patience through every room. Lily tested her often. Some mornings, she would refuse to eat. Other times, she would throw her doll across the room, demanding that Claire pick it up. But Claire never raised her voice. She picked up the doll, set it back in Lily's lap, and spoke calmly. Her patience never broke, no matter how many times Lily tried. Ethan noticed this and was puzzled. The other maids had lost their temper by the second or third day. They had shouted, or cried, or simply walked out. Claire was different. She absorbed every sharp word and every tantrum, yet she never looked defeated. Ethan found himself watching her more closely each day, wondering what gave her such strength. One night, Lily woke up screaming from a nightmare. Her cries echoed down the hall. Ethan rushed from his study, but by the time he reached the child's room, Claire was already there. She sat on the bed, holding Lily close, whispering in a steady voice until the girl's sobs slowed. Ethan froze in the doorway. His daughter had never let anyone comfort her in that way. Lily clung to Claire's blouse, her small fists shaking. Claire stroked her hair, telling her she was safe. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He wanted to step inside, but something told him to stay back. He watched as Lily finally drifted back to sleep, her head resting against the maid's shoulder. The sight burned into his mind, making him wonder how this stranger had done what he never could. The next morning, Claire found Lily sitting by the window again, staring out at the garden. The child's eyes were red from the night before, but she did not hide her face when Claire walked in. Instead, she asked in a low voice if she could have breakfast outside. It was the first request Lily had ever made. Claire smiled gently and agreed. She set up a small table in the garden, placing fruit and warm bread on it. Lily ate in silence, but the act itself was a step forward. Later that day, Lily spilled a jar of ink on purpose. It spread across the floor like a dark pool. She looked up at Claire, waiting for anger, waiting for the same reaction she had seen in others. But Claire only took a cloth, knelt down, and cleaned it. She did not scold. She simply said that accidents happen, and then she handed Lily a clean sheet of paper for drawing. Lily frowned in confusion. No one had ever reacted like that before. Ethan came home earlier than usual and found his daughter sitting at the table with Claire. The girl was drawing again, but this time she pushed the paper slightly toward the maid as if sharing. Claire praised her work with quiet words, and Lily's face softened. Ethan felt a sharp ache in his chest, a mix of sadness and hope. He stood there for a long moment, then turned away before they could see him. That evening, the house seemed less silent. There was a warmth that had not been there in years. "Dot!" The staff noticed it too. The cook whispered in the kitchen that maybe this maid would last. The gardener said he had seen Lily walking outside without her usual scowl. Even the housekeeper, who had doubted Claire on the first day, admitted that something was changing. Ethan sat in his study, staring at an old photograph of his wife. He touched the frame with his hand, thinking of how much Lily missed her mother. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a future where his daughter might laugh again. He did not know what role Claire would play, but deep inside, he knew she had already begun to heal what seemed unbreakable. Ethan returned late one evening to find the mansion quiet. He expected to see Lily asleep and Claire gone to her room, but instead, he heard a soft voice coming from the child's bedroom, walked closer, and paused at the door. Claire was sitting on the floor beside Lily's bed, her back resting against the wall. Lily was curled up under the blanket, wide awake, listening as Claire sang in a low voice. The song was not cheerful, but it was steady and full of feeling. Ethan listened carefully and realized it was not just a lullaby. There was sorrow in the words, a kind of sadness that only someone who had lived through loss could carry. When the song ended, Lily whispered a question. She asked if Claire had a family of her own. For a moment there was silence, then Claire answered gently. She said she had once had a family, but they were gone now. She did not go into detail, but Ethan heard the weight in her voice. He understood then that Claire was not just caring for his daughter out of duty. She was caring for her because she knew the pain of being left behind. Lily reached out and touched Claire's hand. It was the first time she had shown such trust. Claire smiled softly and held her hand in return. Ethan felt his throat tighten as he watched from the doorway. He stepped back before they could see him, his heart heavy yet filled with a strange sense of hope. The next day, Claire continued her work around the mansion. She cleaned, she organized, and she took time to sit with Lily whenever the child wanted. She never pushed her to talk, but she always listened when Lily chose to share small words. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, Ethan joined them in the garden. Lily was drawing again, her sketchbook balanced on her knees. She had drawn her mother once more, but this time the picture was different. Instead of a sad face, she had drawn her mother smiling. Ethan's chest ached when he saw it. He asked Lily if she would show him, and to his surprise, she handed the drawing to him without hesitation. It was the first time she had ever shared her work with him. Ethan looked at the picture for a long time, then bent down and kissed the top of her head. Lily did not pull away. Claire watched silently, her eyes soft. She knew that a bridge had been built in that moment, one that had been missing for years. As the days went on, Lily began to change. She laughed once when Claire told her a gentle story about a bird in the garden. The sound was faint, but real. Ethan heard it from another room and froze, hardly believing it. He leaned against the wall, closing his eyes as tears stung them. His daughter's laughter was something he thought he might never hear again. The staff noticed too. It whispered less about curses and more about miracles. The cook brought Lily small treats, and the gardener saved the best flowers for her. The house that had once felt cold was beginning to feel alive again. That evening, Ethan sat in the library with Claire. Lily had gone to sleep earlier, holding her doll close. The fire flickered in the fireplace as Ethan poured himself a glass of water. He turned to Claire and thanked her, his voice low but firm. He admitted that he did not know how she had done it, but she had reached Lily in a way no one else could. Claire did not boast. She only said that Lily had always needed someone to see her pain and not turn away. Ethan studied her face in the firelight. He realized then that Claire carried her own pain, yet she chose to heal others instead of closing herself off. For the first time since his wife's death, Ethan felt the stirrings of something he thought was gone. It was not just gratitude. It was something deeper, though he could not name it yet. The rain fell hard against the tall windows of the mansion. The storm came without warning, shaking the trees outside and filling the air with thunder. The power flickered once, and Lily ran down the hallway in fear. She had always hated storms. Her small feet carried her straight into Claire's arms, and she buried her face in the maid's blouse. Claire lifted her gently and carried her back to the room. She sat on the bed with Lily still clinging to her. Ethan appeared at the door, worried. He had never seen his daughter run to anyone like that. She always faced her fear with silence, shutting everyone out. But now she had chosen to run into Claire's arms without hesitation. Lily whispered that she was scared. Claire held her close, rocking her slightly. She told her that storms always pass, and that the sound of thunder could not harm her. Her voice was calm and steady even as the storm outside grew louder. Ethan watched, unable to move, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. After a while, Lily looked up at Claire with wet eyes. Her lips trembled, and then she spoke a single word that Ethan had not heard in years. She called her Mama. The word slipped out like a secret, but once spoken, it filled the room. Claire froze, her eyes widening in surprise. She did not correct the child. She only kissed her hair and whispered that she was safe. Ethan felt the weight of that moment crush him and lift him all at once. Tears blurred his vision. His daughter, who had closed her heart to the world for so long, had opened it at last. She had found in Claire what she had lost with her mother. The impossible had happened before his eyes. When the storm passed, Lily fell asleep in Claire's arms. Ethan stepped inside quietly. He wanted to thank Claire, but the words stuck in his throat. He simply stood there, watching his daughter sleep peacefully. For the first time in years, the child's face was calm. Later that night, Ethan found Claire in the library. She was sitting by the fire, her hands folded in her lap. He sat across from her, searching for the right words. He finally told her that he had heard Lily call her Mama. His voice shook as he spoke. He admitted that part of him had felt jealous, but another part was grateful beyond measure. Claire listened without interrupting. She told him softly that she had not wanted to take the place of Lily's mother. She only wanted to be someone the child could trust, someone who would not leave. She spoke with honesty, and Ethan felt the truth in her words. Silence filled the room after that, but it was not heavy. It was gentle, like the silence of two people who understood one another. Ethan realized then how much Claire meant to both him and his daughter. She had become the light in their dark home. The next morning, Lily woke with a smile. She ran into the kitchen where Claire was preparing breakfast and hugged her tightly. The staff watched with wide eyes. The girl who had once pushed everyone away was now holding on with all her strength. The change was clear to everyone. Ethan stood nearby, his heart full. He knew life would never be the same again. The walls of grief that had trapped his family for so long were breaking down. Claire had done the impossible, and Ethan could no longer deny the truth. His daughter was healing, and so was he. The mansion was no longer the same. The halls that once echoed with silence now carried softer sounds. There was the sound of Lily's footsteps running down the stairs, the sound of her laughter when Claire teased her gently, and the sound of voices sharing meals together. The staff felt the change as well. They spoke quietly about how the house had grown warmer, as if life had returned after a long winter. Ethan watched the change with his own eyes. He had once believed his daughter would never smile again, yet here she was, chasing butterflies in the garden with her hair flying in the wind. He often stood at a distance, his heart heavy with gratitude, and something deeper he was afraid to name. Each time he looked at Claire, he saw not only the maid who had healed his child, but the woman who had touched his own heart in ways he could not deny. One evening, Ethan invited Claire to sit with him on the veranda. The sky was painted with shades of orange as the sun sank behind the hills. Lily was asleep inside after a long day of play. For a while they sat in silence, watching the sky. Finally, Ethan spoke. He thanked Claire for all she had done. His words were simple, but his voice carried weight. He told her that she had not only saved his daughter, but had also given him hope again. Claire listened with quiet eyes. She said she had done nothing extraordinary. She only gave Lily what she needed most, which was love and patience. She admitted that caring for Lily had also healed her own heart. She had come into the mansion with her own wounds, but Lily had filled a space in her soul she thought would remain empty forever. Ethan looked at her then, really looked at her, and felt something stir inside him. For years he had locked away his feelings, convinced that love had no place in his life anymore. But now he could see clearly. He could see that love had found its way back into the mansion, carried on the gentle strength of the woman before him. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between the three of them grew stronger. Lily no longer hid her drawings. She showed them proudly to Claire and even to her father. One afternoon, she gave Ethan a picture she had drawn of the three of them standing together in the garden. Ethan held the picture in his hands, and his voice broke when he told her it was beautiful. Lily smiled brightly and hugged him, something she had not done in years. The walls of grief that had trapped them were gone now. Their place was a new beginning, one built on trust and love. The mansion no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a home. The staff noticed it every day, smiling as they worked. The cook baked more, the gardener planted new flowers, and the air in the house was filled with a sense of life. One night as Ethan tucked Lily into bed, she whispered that she was happy. He kissed her forehead and told her he was happy too. When he left the room, he found Claire waiting in the hall. He looked at her for a long moment, then simply said thank you again, but this time his eyes said more than his words ever could. Claire understood, and she smiled. The story of a mansion once filled with silence had turned into a story of love reborn. The child who could not be reached had finally opened her heart, and the father who thought he had lost everything found more than he ever imagined. Claire had done the impossible, and together they were no longer broken pieces. They were a family.